Hello, and welcome back to Queer Cinema Catchup's discussion of Season 2 of Severance. We are now on
Episode 6, Attila.
And what do you think of this episode?
I thought it was very strong. I am a sucker for some romance, and it was pretty romantic, I would say. Pretty wholesome.
Oh my gosh. As soon as you said that, it all came flashing before my eyes, everything that happened.
It was so sweet.
Yeah.
Basically, Mark and Helly are hook up for real this time, with Mark saying very awkward but very adorable things like, it's not fair that you didn't get to know that this happened, so if you need me to tell you anything about it, I will. And she's like, no, that's okay. And then she kind of is very upset, understandably, and goes and takes her own time to process.
What was that?
It was an Instagram notification. Take her own moment to process. And what I really appreciate about Helly R, to contrast her with Helena, she makes an active decision to go, okay, this memory was stolen from me, my body was used, but I am going to go claim this experience for myself. And goes back to Mark and basically says, let's do the deed if you want to. And they have a very sweet interaction.
But let's say that Helena doesn't take action.
A little bit less. I mean, I think in a more roundabout way.
In this very episode, Audi Mark's at a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
And then he looks up and Helena? And Helena's right there, and Helena goes up to Mark and decides to strike a conversation with him.
I know, but she's all very subterfuge. What's the word? Subterfuge? You don't know what the hell is that word for like spying? It's all underhanded, all sneaky. Yes. Where Helly R is very direct and out in the open about what she wants, and Helena is more in the shadows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for the namesake of the title of this episode, where did it come up in the episode, and how would you apply it to Severance overall?
Well, the name is Attila, and each time it was mentioned in the episode, I don't know what happened, but Joe and I happened to be speaking at that time, and so for the course of the episode, I actually did not know what it was referenced for, but it was when Irv goes to dinner at Bert and his partner Field's house, and thankfully, somehow, even though we were talking, Joe was able to hear what was said. I don't know how he did that. It was very eerie, but would you like to share what you heard? Because I didn't hear it.
So at the dinner, Bert says, he's telling the story to Irv, kind of this anecdote about how when they used to call each other Han, and then at one point, as a term of endearment, they started calling each other Attila.
Wait, that didn't even... last night when you said that, I was thinking yeah, Attila the Hun. I still didn't understand where it came from, but when you said it that time, I heard it oh, Hun.
Yeah.
I was a little lost.
And so I think that it's a really genius way to just emphasize how now I think the creators are definitely trying to make us see that Bert might not be a good guy.
Yeah, we both were getting some villain vibes.
And then, the fact that he's being called Attila is kind of hitting the...
from my memory from school, Attila the Hun was a conqueror. Is that right? With many progeny.
Yes.
Which speaks to polygamy. And in this episode, it's all about... So now Mark has slept with Helly and Helena and has had these different relationships with them, especially now that he's encountered Helena out in the real world. And at the same time, Mark's going through reintegration. So Audi and Innie Mark are basically ceasing to exist anyway, because once they're integrated, it's a whole new person.
Yeah. Attila the Hun was a ruthless 5th century leader of the Huns who united numerous Central Asian tribes and launched devastating invasions into the Roman Empire, terrorizing Europe with his fearsome military tactics and legendary brutality. And I think it applies to possibly Bert and Severance, to Lumen itself. But with Bert, what was really interesting is almost in that same anecdote as he's recounting how they used to call each other how they used to call each other Han, and then Field says 20 years ago we started calling each other Attila. And it's when you started at Lumen. And then Bert's oh, no, you're confused. It was 10 years ago. It's 10 years ago. And then Irv kind of picks up on one of them is lying. And then as they're leaving, Bert again says to Irv, he's losing his mind, Fields. It was 10 years ago. 10 years, when the Severed floor started.
Yeah, so what's significant about that is it implies that perhaps Severance has been around for longer than we think, if they are truly lying. But I still, even though they were very suspicious, and they told this odd story about why Bert, played by Christopher Walken, underwent severance, and it was because he was a scoundrel who did many bad things. I assumed cheating, but also at the same time maybe worse things. And they were very religious. They were Lutheran. And Fields was asked him, do you think you're going to go to heaven? And Bert knew deep down inside that he was not going to go to heaven. And then their pastor said, severed individuals are their own people with their own souls that have just as much of a chance of getting into heaven as, say, the outie or any. Like, they both have an equal chance of getting into heaven.
Yeah.
So they claim that Bert underwent severance to get at a chance, a second chance at getting into heaven, basically, so he could be with Fields one day.
Yes.
Which is a little bit sounds a little like bullshit to me. Even though
Fields seemed to genuinely be religiously concerned. He said that he went back. Okay, so this was at the dinner. Fields recounts why Bert first got into becoming severed in the first place, which ties to the religious part of it.
Yeah.
But then he also acknowledges that Bert and Irv must have had a relationship, and then there's a really odd pause at the table. It's just the three of them. And then Fields says, he clarifies, he's like, actually, I think I talked to my pastor, and I think it's like really important for severed people to find love too.
Yeah, I think that his religiosity is genuine, but Bert was, when they were recounting the story, Bert was giving Irv looks that implied to me that he isn't all that religious.
Oh, like rolling his eyes and
so
stuff.
I'm not rolling his eyes, but it's kind of just like loaded looks. So I think there's more to it than that. But even so, even though they're acting very suspicious and it seems like he's a bad guy, at the same time when Irv goes to dinner, a Lumen man comes to his house to investigate Irv's house. So it seems like Irv was lured to Bert so that Lumen could go sneak into his apartment and see what was up, what he's been doing all this time, which makes him seem even more like a villain. But in spite of all that, I also wonder if it's sort of like a test. Like Helena, Bert, they are popping back up into these outies' lives. And it seems like they're trying to assess if there's going to be a reaction in Mark or in Irv, a recognition that's deeper than just, oh, we know the facts. You know, like, oh, I know Helena is the leader of Lumen, but maybe maybe Mark's going to recognize her because of the connection they had in the any world. Mm-hmm. So it feels like a test of sorts to see what are the limits, how strong is Severance, maybe, if that makes sense.
How strong is it?
The mystery, like much of the show.
And Mark is going through severe issues with his, what's it called, reformation?
Reintegration.
And throughout the show, at one point after him and Helly have sex, he gets bloody nose. Miss Wong is helping with his nosebleed. And then he immediately is back with, I always forget her name.
Azal. Ragabi. And he realized that it was a flashback. Like he was like, it's a memory.
He's
reintegrate, which is like an interesting. I'm so curious to see what happens the rest of the season, because if they're playing with time like that, there could be a moment where we realize, like, what we're seeing we think is the present. Like, we thought Helly and Mark's romantic moment was the present day storyline, but in reality, it had already happened in the past. We're not privy to whatever else was going on.
There was already the theory I told you about that we saw on Reddit, where the person was theorizing even back to season 1, is, the assumption is you're severed, you go down below, and you work for the day. Then when the day's over, you go back up, and you're back in the outie world. But someone on Reddit was commenting that the time didn't line up, and so he thinks that these outies are very isolated, which doesn't make sense with everyone. Because there's some people that are in relationships.
I don't think it's possible.
That they'd know if they were gone for longer amounts of time. But someone was theorizing that Mark was underground longer than he realized.
I think there are people that maybe, like Gemma, obviously is trapped down there. Mm. And then the people with the goats, I've seen some theories that maybe they're homeless people or people who've been forced to live at Lumen, never get to go back outside and be their outies, which I frankly buy. I think that seems realistic.
But going back to, Mark, with the reintegration, he realizes that it was a memory, and then Rugabi says that she's gonna put some liquid, there you can see where the severed chip in his brain.
She's like, I'll use the hole in your head.
She's like, I'll use the hole in your head.
He's like, hell no.
Well, and then he says, hell yes.
That's later.
After
he goes, he's like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm starving. And she's like, that's a symptom of reintegration sickness. He's like, whatever. And then he goes to a Chinese restaurant and orders 1 billion things. I don't know if you noticed how many plates he had at his table. But then Helena was there.
I love family style, so I was all for it.
He was by himself. There was no family.
What's wrong with dying alone? Why try everything?
Nothing's wrong with dying alone. This is a tangent. But Helena's there.
I don't know if you noticed. He was eating a lot of food.
Because he's sick. They said that's what happened.
Sick of this severance, being severed.
Of his reintegration sickness. And the symptom is being starving. That's what Ragabi told him. And then Helena was in the booth.
Yeah.
And then he gets scared because he realizes that they're tracking him. They might figure out that he's reintegrating, which would destroy the entire point of becoming reintegrated so that he can spy on Lumen and figure out what's going on with Gemma. So he rushes back and tells Ragabi, do it now.
Because Helena's so bold, and she's like, I'm the head of this company. We need to meet later. And then Mark's like, to talk about my severed, she recalls back to from the end of season 1, what was that called with the switch?
The overtime contingency.
The overtime contingency. And at first, she makes it seem like it's going to be, like we need to meet later for a date. And then he clarifies, he's like, about the overtime contingency? And she's like, yes, that. And then Mark storms home and says that
they kind of they do kind of flirt a little bit. And then there's that component, but then also...
Honestly, I sensed attraction
chemistry.
and chemistry.
Well, there definitely is attraction. I mean, they're attracted to one another in both... I mean, Helena definitely is attracted to Mark in either... Well, I guess there's mystery around her motivation for going to the severed floor. But regardless, there's attraction on some level, enough to have sex. But after they flirt, there's also this moment where she says, I'm really sorry for your wife. And I think she calls her the wrong name. It says Hannah. And then he goes, Gemma. And I swear to you, I don't know why I filled me with such rage at this woman who's in charge of this company that has kind of made Mark believe that his wife is dead and she's not, is casually bringing it up. And Mark knows that. And I was feeling violent. I was like, you need to push that woman. She is evil. I was really angry.
But Heliar's in there.
I know. It's a conundrum. But yeah, then he rushes home to get reintegrated, to get the... I don't really know exactly what they were doing with the chip.
Which is visually overwhelming.
No, it was a no for me. I couldn't watch.
Visually, it's so amazing with like visual effects and then also like practical effects, but sometimes you just accept things for being real, and definitely Ragabi takes this like long ass needle and puts Mark can see it too, which I feel like was bad practice. He can see the monitor and see where like the chip is in his head and like see his brain, his skull, and then you can see the needle going in.
And she
into his
terrified.
Brain, and she's terrified.
Scared.
I
was scared.
We didn't know if they were going to take the chip out, but then it seems like she injected a fluid that like surrounded the chip, which probably.
Oh, now I'm seeing maybe siphons it off so it can't do its job.
Exactly. Oh. And kind of because I was like, what? Then we'll lose any Mark. But you were saying that it's reintegration, so they'll come together, so they'll both exist.
They'll both exist, but it's sort of like it's like an interesting philosophy question, because if there are two separate people, right? And then you integrate them into a third person and both halves are there, are they really the same? They're someone entirely new because it's melding the two versions together.
Yeah.
So really, no, there will be no more any Mark or outie Mark, which makes what's going on with Helly all the more complicated because he is being honest and authentic because any Mark doesn't know he's being reintegrated, but any moment now he's no longer going to exist in the same way. And so Helly's kind of falling in love with this man who's disappearing, which... Wow, when I said that, it made me feel really sad inside.
But even though it's a new person, it still has the minds of both people.
But he's in love with he's in love with two people, you know what I mean? So there is, and that's why the Attila reference is
I'm confused though because Gemma's dead.
But she's not dead. She's down in the severed floor.
There's a body in the severed floor.
The last time we saw her, she was alive.
What would be the point of keeping her trapped down there?
I don't know.
And how's that legal?
Great questions.
I guess all the goat people could also be people that have gone missing. Like you said, if they were homeless, like people won't miss them. But why target Miss Casey?
So I guess, I don't really know. I think that's the mystery, but I guess
I am asking you, like you're the showrunner. Can you please just tell us? Stop withholding.
I don't know. But I'm guessing.
Why did Mark eat so much Chinese food? And why is Miss Casey trapped down there?
The things that Joe wants to know at the end of each episode. I think it has something to do with, they both are professors. And I didn't
know that.
Yeah, at a university.
Wow.
And then I saw an interesting theory that she's a professor of history. And so maybe she knew something about Lumen and its origin and who knows? I really don't know. But Probably not for a very good or legal reason. Let's put it like that.
And
Is there a double blind? Is there something really bad going on where Gemma actually, if we think Bert's bad, could Gemma also be bad?
Because we've never seen it. We've never seen her like any flashbacks.
No, we don't know anything about her except as Miss Casey.
And so they're gonna do some end of season 2 thing where we find out Miss Casey's bad. Like we see some
surprised.
flashback.
I would not be shocked if she chose to have this happen. If she decided to leave her.
Because we don't know what their life was like
No.
beforehand. So the writers left a window open to decide.
There was such a really good line this episode where Mark was talking about the bargaining stage of grief. How you will bargain with yourself. You'll say, I'll drink less. I'll be less short. So he's and you think that he's describing the reality of their relationship perhaps. And then he goes, and in the hopes that you might get that person back. And then he said, for me, that might really happen. Which really, I don't know, made me feel.
Hopeful.
It was just like a cool
Yeah.
line. I don't know what to say.
I didn't finish the fact that I was talking about complementing visual and practical effects. There was the long needle. I didn't even you end up seeing Rugabi pull the needle out of his head from a profile shot, which I guess they probably did some a VFX thing, but it's just the needle keeps coming and coming out. You're like, that is a long ass needle. And then we're at the end of this episode, and of course we can go back and talk about anywhere else in the episode, but just to finish the end of the show is then Mark is they pulled the needle out, the procedure's been done. It's never been performed before because they're rushing, I don't know what they're rushing the process of.
Reintegration, I guess.
And then the doorbell's ringing, and then Rugabi's like, don't move your head too much. And Mark's shaking around, flooding and coming back.
And someone's like, why didn't you tie him down if it's so dangerous?
Yeah. And then Mark's like, my car's in the driveway. She knows I'm here. And I was thinking that it was going to be
Bach.
her or
Helena.
Yeah, Helena. But it ended up being his sister. And then his sister's like, hey, we gotta infiltrate the system. We gotta figure it out.
I have a new idea.
And he's like, can't be bothered with that right now. She's like, what, you're giving up? He's like, no, actually, I'm doing it on my own.
And he looks so ill. The makeup was so well done.
Beneath his eyes, dark circles, and he's trying to get a glass of water.
Honestly, it was such a visceral.
It was really upsetting to see.
Recreation of a stroke that it made me terrified of ever having one.
And his sister, what's her name?
Devin.
Devin is sitting down at the counter. Mark's grabbing a glass of water. He's trying to drink, and then Devin and Mark start arguing, and Mark can hardly focus because his brain's glitching. And then finally, I forget what
he goes,
finally says.
What's that smell? He's so mad. And then we're he's having a stroke, and then he collapses and begins to foam at the mouth and sees.
Well, not only so, Rugabi says don't move too much, and you see Mark hit the floor and his head bounces off the ground. And then he starts foaming the mouth. And then Rugabi comes upstairs and Devin's like, who the hell are you?
I know. It was pretty scary. I'd be pretty freaked out if some lady emerged.
And then is that how the episode ends?
Yeah, which was they're really good at cliffhangers. It was a great cliffhanger.
Yeah. And then we didn't talk about who's he dumb.
Oh, Dylan.
Dylan and his wife, they're having more sessions with Innie.
The family engagement sessions, I
What's
guess.
his name?
Dylan?
Dylan.
Oh. I don't know.
Innie, Dylan, and his Audi wife, they're meeting up, having these. Now it's escalated to a hug and a kiss
and
this time.
Kissed.
And now it's the wife lies to Audi Dylan about meeting.
Says, it didn't happen. They canceled it.
And
she's
so,
fallen in love with Innie Dylan.
Yes.
And why do you think that is? What do you think it is about Innie Dylan that speaks to her in the way that Audi Dylan does not?
He's just is infatuated with her, and he seems so innocent, and all the baggage isn't there.
And he cares. He's like, I just want to know about my kids and look at you. It was so
it was
sweet.
very precious.
It's so sweet.
But then Audi Dylan isn't.
He's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. It's just you're right. If someone's staring at you and saying all I care about is you, that's pretty powerful. But it was very interesting because they intercut Dylan and I don't remember his wife's name, but played by Merritt Weaver, their kiss with Helly, R, and Mark hooking up. Then
they have sex in an empty office with saran, not like cellophane, whatever stuff over the dust covers. It looks very uncomfortable, but it was very It
was very cinematic, and it was very consent forward, where they both say an awkward yes. Mm. It was very sweet. And then my favorite part my favorite part, Adam Scott was very swoon-worthy. They come out, they're walking down the hallway, and Helly goes, was it as good as it was with Helena? And then he turns to her with like, I guess like lust in his eyes. And then just kisses her as an answer. And I was like, whoa, that was really smooth, Mark. And then unfortunately he gets a nosebleed. So alas, we cannot live in the romance.
So we're six episodes in, right?
Yeah. There's only, I think, 4 left.
And how are you feeling? Like, do you have a favorite episode so far? Do you feel like it's all like crescendoing to something? Do you feel it's like in a wave of like some episodes are good, some episodes you don't like as much, or how are you feeling about it?
This one I really liked. I felt like it was propulsive, thematically very strong, emotionally very engaging. The one before that I didn't feel as emotionally connected to. I don't know why.
You say that, but I thought we were really excited about it, actually. It was Trojan Horse.
Oh yeah. I don't know.
We really liked that episode.
We did. I guess I liked them all. I mean, obviously episode 4 was a standout because of the Helena reveal, and I love the ending. I just love when things fill me with adrenaline. Maybe I need more adrenaline in my life because I get it from TV. I'm like, this is living, but it's TV. But yeah, I would say overall, I'm enjoying the season. I'm curious to see where it goes. And one thought that I really one takeaway I have from this episode, in addition to like how they're like exploring romance and authenticity. And like I was thinking about at work, you can't really bring that to work. Your full self, your romantic self, and that's sort of like a metaphor for Severance. And then they also showed Milchak, which we didn't talk about, responding to his performance review. And one of the notes he got was uses too many big words. And they had the scene of him looking in the mirror, trying to dumb down a phrase he had said earlier in the episode. And it was very alarming. And it also made me think about how at work or out in society, you have to like shape yourself into this acceptable form. And I don't know, I just think thematically, it's such a sci-fi concept, but then like thematically, it's like touching things that feel very real. Mm-hmm. And so I'm getting really more excited, and I feel like it's going to go somewhere really interesting by the end. How are you feeling?
I think it will go somewhere interesting by the end also. And I've been enjoying the journey, and I think a big compliment I have for each episode is I feel like there's a lot of... what's the word? There's like a nice contrast between each episode.
Yeah.
Like not one episode feels the same as the one
They're
before.
very different.
And I think early on, in our first episode, you were theorizing like one episode's gonna be the innie, one episode's gonna be the outie. And I think that they kind of are doing that. They're doing it in a way, but like within an episode, kind of like where one episode's more heavy focused on the innie and outie worlds.
Yeah.
But now as Mark's becoming more reintegrated, it's
bleeding together.
There's something else I was going to say about that, or about... Oh, this is so random, but I feel like we must talk about it. And I kind of said it during the episode. What was up at Field and Bert's house in their kitchen? They had so many salt shakers. What was going on? There was an establishing shot, like... 2 minutes before you made the comment you did, where it shows like a wide shot of the entire kitchen, and like your eyes like immediately, at least mine did, to all like the like salt and pepper shakers at the top. I was like, wow, that's a lot of salt and pepper shakers. And then like 3 shots like go by, and then you're like, look at all this salt and pepper shakers. I was really distracted by they had a painting in their house, and I was staring at the painting. It was very, I don't know, my own gay male assumptions about especially middle-aged to elderly
salt
men.
Shakers? No, or are they shakers? No, that's not what it's called. Swingers.
Swingers. But just like having like collecting things and becoming like really obsessive about items, materials, and... But salt shakers, it all looked the same. And somebody pointed out on Reddit that at the Chinese restaurant, there were a lot of trophies. Like multiples of trophies. I didn't actually see this, so I think it was actually significant. They weren't salt shakers. I think they were pepper grinders. Oh. Well, yes, that. Which sure has to do something with severed psychology. If anybody has any thoughts about that, my mind was very... And then apparently I didn't see, but in the house there was a pineapple. Somebody said on Reddit, so okay, the pineapple is what they would bring to Mark, to all the other employees to convince them to come back as sort of a gift. And someone on Reddit pointed out that a pineapple is synonymous with, it's like a symbol for consciousness. Which, it's just a cool theme, a cool symbolism thing. But anyway, So the implication is if there's a pineapple in their house, it means that a Lumen person visited recently. And
Yeah.
well, I guess we're bearing the lead.
Duh.
Bert invites Irv over, and as they're having the dinner, one of the Lumen
Yeah, I said
employees.
that. I wasn't being very clear.
One of the Lumen employees breaks into Irv's house. And so with the pineapple, you could think that maybe someone recently, we don't know when, went to their house to convince Bert to bring Irv to his house. But earlier in the season, we saw Bert stalking Irv.
Trailing him in the car.
And so it's hard to say, is it kind of like in the same way that like Helena, it's hard to see if she's really interested in Mark or if she's just using him for...
Or is it a little both?
Or is it a little of both? I think that might be happening the same with Bert.
I agree.
You mentioned something about love.
So I'm wondering if in some way, shape, or form, they are testing the strength of Severance to see if certain human emotions can break through the barrier of your innie and outie self. So love would be an emotion that might... so that's why Gemma's down there, perhaps, to test if Mark is ever able to recognize her as an innie. And then with like Bert and Irving, they had this strong emotional connection as innies, and they seem to still have chemistry as outies, but we can't really test. They already know they work together, so it's not the same idea. But like also with Helena appearing in the Chinese restaurant, it seemed like she was testing Mark a little bit. She doesn't know he's been reintegrated. Mark's worried that she's going to notice he's reintegrated. But I think Helena is trying to see if Mark, a non-reintegrated outie Mark, feels close to her because of the connection they have in the innie world.
Oh, like a psychological...
Like something that like breaks down the barrier of severance. Like is love stronger than severance, you guys? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I guess it goes back to like, is Lumen...
Or lust.
Are they having these severed people to control them in a way in which Attila the Hun, as we mentioned, was a very brutal and violent person who controlled a lot of people and then also had a lot of children. And there's something about
Yeah.
having children trying to reincarnate Kier or whatever. It's hard to say, is it just for the sake of like Lumen as a corporation, or is it like to understand like the human experience?
It's hard to say, because it could also be like, is it for a military purpose? Like, would all soldiers like a way for like PTSD or something like that? Like, maybe if we sever people and they go into war, they won't have these psychological effects, or as a torture. I don't know. There's like a million theories as to what it could be for, and I'm not smart enough really to generate those. I feel like I'm good at guessing endings or like picking up on like emotional interactions, but I feel like the so what of it all, that part I'm along for the ride. I hope to be surprised.
I like that. We're along for the ride. Thank you so much for listening. Please, if you haven't listened to our other episodes on Severance,
Check them out.
yeah, I was getting choked up just thinking about them. Please like, subscribe as we continue going through season 2 of Severance. Comment, we'd love some interaction. We'd like to hear your thoughts.
Even
like
if you
a little
just like Severance, I'll disagree, but I'll enjoy reading it.
Yeah. All right, goodbye.
Bye.